I was conscious of what was going on around me, but I couldn't move my arms or legs. It was terrifying.
Right.
And I didn't know if I was going to be that way permanently. Didn't know if I was going to be a quadriplegic. Didn't know if I was always going to be in a wheelchair.
As scuba divers, we plan, we prepare, and we execute. We do everything perfectly during a dive. And there are times when you may still end up in a dire and very frightening situation. Today we're going to talk to a truly remarkable individual and about what happened to him during a normal routine day of diving. Welcome to Everything Scuba. Guys, welcome back to Everything Scuba. I am Lyell. If you are a first-time viewer to our channel, welcome. If you're a regular viewer to our channel, welcome back. About a month ago, I posted a video where I outlined what occurred and what happened to me on a fairly routine dive. I had a heart attack. Yep, I'm a normal, healthy guy, never had any cardiac disease in the past, and something pretty significant happened to me. I'm doing well. I thank all the people out there who reached out with well wishes and messages to me, so I appreciate that. But today, we are going to talk to a very interesting and remarkable individual. And he has a very interesting and remarkable story to tell. We're going to meet Dr. Eric Wagner. Eric is a retired dentist who learned to dive in the Army in Puerto Rico. He learned to dive in 1985. Seems like he had a very thorough training background, but something absolutely catastrophic happened to him on a normal routine day of recreational diving that changed his life forever. So guys, I want to introduce you to Dr. Eric Wagner. Eric and I have known each other professionally for some time. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, why are you here talking to me today?
My interest is scuba diving, which is why I'm here to talk to the video and you.
Yeah.
I grew up in eastern Iowa and was a competitive swimmer, swam a small college competition, and I didn't really get into scuba diving until I was in the Army. I ended up being assigned to a small clinic in Puerto Rico, and it was like being sent to paradise for somebody that's comfortable in the water.
Right,
So
yeah, for no doubt. Winters in Iowa versus Puerto Rico, I can see how that would be a nice place to be. So let's talk a little bit about your training.
I ended up taking my courses from Harry Hawk, who was a former UDT diver.
And UDT is?
UDT, he means he was underwater demolition team, and that would be SEALs now.
Okay, so not some Joe Schmo. I mean,
no.
he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, this guy had many years.
And your certification agency at that time was
NAVI.
Okay.
I did basic actually within the month that I first got there, and ultimately we did a number of certification type courses with Harry as the dive master. And I had a master diver certification,
right.
So we were well trained, and he was a good instructor.
Right.
I left Puerto Rico and when I was about 38, and then only got to dive, when you would be there on a vacation. We read about the atolls
Sure.
in Belize, and thought that'd be a pretty spectacular dive. The one that we went to was the Turnoff Atoll, and its lagoon. We went to Turnoff, and that was about an hour and a half from the dock. It was February 17th, 2009.
Okay, so you learned to dive in 1985?
84, 85.
Okay, so you've been diving for 20 plus years at that point. So
Right.
An experienced diver,
Yes.
experienced recreational diver, knew what you were doing. You told me, and when we talked about this on the phone, that typically you do 2 tanks, you do two dives in the morning, and then you'd be done. But the group decided to do a 3rd dive that day.
Well, you travel that far and go to all the trouble of getting there. And even though I had never done more than 2 dives in a day, and I had never gone more than a half an hour out away from the dock before. So I was a little out of my element, but it sounded really good. And when we went, we took lunch and waited around for quite a while, to decompress and so on a little bit. And then when we went for the 3rd dive, it was probably one of the best dives I've ever done.
And that's the last dive that you have ever done, correct?
That's right.
So your ascent, slow, normal ascent to the surface, and I think the protocol for you at that point in time was to do a safety stop for
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So a 5-minute safety stop at 15 feet.
Right.
And at that point, you still were good to go, right? I mean,
Right.
no issues during the dive, no issues during the surface interval, or your safety stop, and came to the surface.
We got to the surface. I was on the surface for quite a while, and before the boat came to pick me up, probably 10 minutes.
Okay.
And you know, of course, get into the boat and start taking off your gear. About the time I got all of the gear taken off, everything started to hurt.
Okay.
So I knew something was wrong.
So let's just summarize. 3 dives, nothing particularly unusual.
That's right. Not a physical dive, any of the 3.
So the only
Beautiful
thing
dive.
really maybe out of your protocol was it was just one additional dive that you had done that day, but everything was done in your normal standard fashion. Nothing unusual.
Right.
You get back to the boat.
All of my joints were starting to ache.
Okay.
And my back and down my legs.
Okay.
Everything just, you know, it was more than just achiness. It really got worse and worse.
Okay. Did you alert the crew to your symptoms?
I did. I let them know right away as soon as I knew this was more than just normal aches.
Okay.
But they got the oxygen out and put me on 100% oxygen right away. So they, you know, I felt like they got things going, got everybody ready, and we took off for the dock right away.
Okay.
Fairly shortly after I started on the oxygen, I lost consciousness, and after that I don't remember, but just little scraps of memory here and there. Really for the next couple of days.
Okay.
So I have to report to things that people told me.
Were you able to move?
I was moving okay at that point,
Right.
but I wasn't conscious, or I was just a little bit here and there. My friend, my dive buddy, Denny, said that at one point they thought my breathing stopped, and the nurse was having trouble finding a pulse.
Okay.
They ran out of oxygen after about an hour, and the last half hour was pretty tough. I know I was trying just to relax and not worry too much about it. Just get to the dock. I have a memory of them carrying me out of the boat onto the dock, and the main source of transportation in Belize was a golf cart.
Okay.
So they
Not an ambulance, a golf cart.
No, they
All right.
propped me up in the golf cart, and a couple of guys held me up in place in the seat, and they drove me to the decompression chamber, which fortunately they have on Ambergris
Okay.
Key. Dr. Rodriguez, he was optimistic, and he said, "Well, we'll put him in the decompression chamber, and he'll probably be okay in just a little bit." They ran me through a table type decompression chamber twice. No response. No improvement. Everything the same. Well, I think they pretty much decided that Houston was going to be the best place.
Okay.
Houston had the experience and the equipment and so on. You know, the expertise. So then it was just a matter of arranging the transportation to get me there. They put me on it was a little 4 or 5 seat airplane, an air taxi sort of thing, to get me to the mainland. And then from there, they put me on a life flight, air ambulance, and we flew at 1,000 feet to Brownsville to refuel, and then on to Houston. You know, I got to the emergency room, and I was having some hallucinations.
Okay.
That were fairly spectacular, some of them. We went through the emergency room, and then the next morning they transported me to the ICU, intensive care, and about 8 o'clock in the morning I woke up. I was conscious of what was going on around me, but I couldn't move my arms or legs, and I was speaking, but they had me on a nasal cannula with oxygen.
What ultimately did they discover that may have led to this incident?
They found that I had an air embolism in my left lung.
Okay.
And they, just as an aside, they also found that I had a PFO.
Okay. So a PFO
is a patent foramen ovale,
okay.
meaning that it's hole in the heart.
That is a small opening from the right side to the left side of your heart. We have non-oxygenated blood that's traveled through our system that's returning to the right side of the heart. And because there's a PFO there, some of that blood can skip through that hole and enter the oxygenated side. So not only can blood skip through that PFO, but gas that is bubbling, the nitrogen that exits our system, can also skip through that PFO and quickly enter into our system. And so that's your understanding of how this incident ultimately occurred to create the injuries that you had.
That's right.
Right. What percentage of the general population possibly has a PFO?
It varies, but opinions are 25 to 30% of the general population will have a PFO and not have any symptoms.
So Eric, I know from my experience, I am not macho enough to deny the fact that I was pretty darn scared as to what occurred. Being on a life flight at 1,000 feet with a heart attack ongoing, I was pretty scared. What occurred with you must have been just terrifying.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Right.
And I didn't know if I was going to be that way permanently. Didn't know if I was going to be quadriplegic. Didn't know if I was always going to be in a wheelchair. I didn't know if I was going to do dentistry again.
Sure. How many times were you in a dive chamber during your time in Houston?
I believe I did at least 21 and maybe as many as 26 different sessions, 110 minutes at a time, breathing pure oxygen at 2 atmospheres.
What was their prognosis at that time? Where did they think that, we're going to fix this, you're going to be fine, or what did the doctors tell you?
They didn't know it at first.
Okay.
They weren't sure, and they didn't promise me anything. At first, they had to load me into the chamber. 4 nurses on each corner of a sheet, sliding you over,
Sure.
that kind of thing. By the end of the sessions, I could move myself. I was in a wheelchair and I could skip over from the wheelchair to the chair in the chamber.
How long did it take before you could actually start to move again?
I could move certain things within the first couple of days, the first few. I could see improvement actually after almost every one of the sessions in the chamber.
Ultimately, you came back to work.
I did.
You were back to treating patients. And how long did it take before you actually sat back down in your office again?
Well, I ended up sitting in my office within about 3 or 4 months. And mainly I wasn't doing any hands-on dentistry, just doing a little diagnosis and some exams and that sort of thing.
Any residual long-lasting effects from what happened to you?
Yeah, there's certain parts of my body that are still numb. The neurologist described it as if somebody took a handful of BBs and threw it at my spine. So a lot of it took a little damage.
I alluded to my incident about a month ago. Yours was in about 12, 13 years ago. So
Right.
The economics might be a little bit different nowadays. How did you find, the finances and actually figuring out the entire cost of this, and how was it remedied?
It was expensive, obviously. I would say the Divers Alert Network, I would definitely recommend them. The life flight cost $23,500. The total bill for the hospital was well over $250,000. Fortunately, the insurance that I had and the trip insurance that I had paid for most everything.
Okay.
So that it wasn't a financial disaster
Sure,
for me.
sure. Given what happened to you, an experienced diver who was well trained, who didn't do anything crazy out of the ordinary on your 3 dives that day, do you have any advice for divers out there?
I think you should know your limitations, and when you exceed them, it better be worth it. You never know when the unexpected can happen, and even if you're trying to do the right thing. So be prepared.
Our goal here is not to scare away people from the sport of scuba diving. Quite the opposite. We want to encourage people to become divers, but we want them to be safe divers. But in this instance, and in my instance, things were done appropriately according to our training, but we need to be aware of those potential risks. In addition to this, these incidents can be a very expensive process. I can't say thank you enough to Dr. Wagner for giving us some of his time today. In our next video, we are going to talk to representatives from Divers Alert Network, otherwise known as DAN. DAN is a really great organization, very focused on diver safety. There's multiple things that DAN does, and we'll talk about all of those. But one of the key elements that they provide is the ability for you to purchase some additional medical insurance. Click the link down below me, and let's learn a little bit more about Divers Alert Network.